After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look good enough, I could see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
He's been missing for 2 days. His work's called, his family's called, I've called, his ex-wife's called, and there's nobody answering the phone. I know there's something very wrong going on here.
I was in the hospital for, I think, 30 days. They did 5 surgeries on me. Reconstruction surgeries to my eye socket, the roof of my mouth, my jaw, just all kinds of stuff. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened that night. And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to kill him.
When you're a teenager, it's normal to make mistakes. It's even expected. But for most teenagers, these mistakes are maybe getting caught sneaking out of the house, cheating on a test, or drinking underage. While these things may seem like a huge mistake at the time, they probably aren't gonna have a huge impact on your future. And then there are the kids whose mistakes are so heinous and evil that they really do destroy any hope for the future that they could have ever had. The following stories tell the tale of 3 killer kids who totally ruined their lives after committing murder.
Well, it is now up to a judge to decide the fate of a Port St. Lucie man who killed his parents with a hammer back in 2011, then threw a party with their bodies still inside the home.
After 6 days, Tyler Hadley's resentencing hearing wrapped up today, and the former teen killer finally spoke.
This is an especially disturbing story, not just because of the horrible things that the killer did to their victims, but because of his heartlessness after the murders. It's a story that truly proves that even someone you think you know really well can have dark secrets, so dark that would truly shock and horrify you. This story is about 17-year-old Tyler Hadley of Port Lucia, Florida. In July of 2012, this disturbed and twisted teen decided to take the lives of the same people who gave him life, his own parents. But this wasn't already disturbing enough. This wasn't just something that Tyler just decided to do one day in a fit of anger or something like that. No, he thought about this for a long time and meticulously planned out every aspect of the murder. He even decided that once the murders were complete, he would throw a party at his house. On the morning of the day he was going to kill his parents, he posted on his Facebook page writing, "Party at my crib tonight, maybe." After that, he popped some pills to take the edge off and started on carrying out his evil plan. Tyler didn't want to give his parents even the slightest chance of surviving his evil attack, so he thought of everything. He knew that the family's dog, a black Labrador retriever, would try to protect his parents from his attack, so he locked the dog outside. Then he got started, beginning with his mother, Mary Jo Hadley. Mary Jo was sitting in the living room of the home working on her computer and completely unaware of what was about to happen. Tyler snuck up behind her with a hammer in hand and then proceeded to bash her head repeatedly with the hammer until she was dead. Meanwhile, Tyler's dad, 54-year-old Blake Hadley, heard his wife's screams and came running to help her. His own son was probably the last person he ever expected to discover standing there in the living room with a now hammer in hand. Tyler then turned on his dad, using the hammer to strike him over and over again too, until he was dead. Tyler then dragged both of the bodies into the master bedroom of the home and then threw a big party in the same house, as if nothing had happened. That night, there were more than 60 teens hanging out and partying in the same house where Tyler had just killed both of his parents. While some noticed that there was a strange foul odor lingering around, many did not suspect a thing. Tyler had a best friend named Michael Mandel who was at the party that night. Tyler ended up confessing to Michael what he had done and even took him into the bedroom where the body of his parents were. Tyler also told Michael that he wanted to take one last picture together because they might never ever get another chance.
Then a new picture sheds fresh light on a Treasure Coast teen. This picture of Tyler Hadley taken at a party hours after he allegedly beat his mom and dad to death with a hammer. It is a picture his best friend says Hadley claimed would be his last, but it is not. Hours later, Hadley would be arrested, booked, and now he faces 2 charges of second-degree murder.
Tyler also told Michael that he planned to take his own life before he could be arrested and charged with his parents' murders. He had no intention of spending the rest of his life in jail.
Tyler Hadley shared a dark secret with his best friend. That friend told us that Hadley planned to kill himself if and when he discovered a gruesome crime scene in his parents' bedroom. Tyler Hadley and Michael Mandel took this picture Saturday night. It was the last picture Mandel thought he'd ever take with his best friend.
If most people realized that their best friend had just killed their own parents and left the bodies hidden in a bedroom of a home that they were all hanging out in, they probably would have run out of the house screaming. But not Michael. Michael didn't even call 911 right away and report the murder. Why not? Because he wasn't actually convinced at first that this was real. He thought Tyler could just be trying to play some sort of twisted prank on him.
After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look at enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
By the next morning, just hours after the party ended, there were rumors swirling around the whole town that Tyler had killed his parents and stashed their bodies in the home. Finally, the cops were called to the scene. They soon discovered the bodies of Mary Jo and Blake Hadley, and Tyler was arrested and charged with their murder.
Tyler Hadley is a few months shy of his 18th birthday, so he is not eligible for the death penalty. He does face life in prison if convicted for murdering his parents. It's something Michael Mandel still can't comprehend, even after seeing it with his own eyes.
Michael Mandel later described the gory scene that Tyler showed him that night. Michael considered Tyler his best friend, and while he did know that Tyler had been getting into trouble a lot, he never would have expected him to do anything like this.
I saw bloody sheets piled everywhere. I saw broken pictures with on them, and I looked down and I saw his dad's leg.
Mandel says the two have been friends for years, though Hadley started getting into trouble around the age of 15.
Michael explained that Tyler had gotten mixed up with a bad crowd and even got caught selling drugs. He was also getting into a lot of heated arguments with his parents, leading to tension within their home. So why did Michael agree to take a selfie with someone who just brutally killed his own parents? According to him, it was because he knew it would be his last chance.
After I found his parents, I knew it was going to be the last time I seen him. This is that look on his face. You could see the horror in his face. That's not normal Tyler.
Tyler ended up pleading not guilty to the murders of his parents. His brother testified against him during the trial and talked about the bad path that Tyler had been going down before the murders. This included stealing from his parents and taking their car without permission. He made it clear that regardless of the fact that Tyler is his only brother, he wanted him to get the most severe sentence possible under the law.
Well, I guess what I want is for him to get the maximum penalty possible, which I understand is life in prison without parole.
Tyler was convicted of his parents' murders. Before sentencing, he was given a chance to speak.
I still don't understand myself and the reasons for my atrocious actions. I really don't know. Contrary to what anyone else may tell you, I'm telling you the truth. For me to try and explain would be like making excuses, and there is no excuse.
He said that he was sorry for what he did, and he didn't even know why he did it.
Tyler Hadley said to the judge that in the past he tried to lie and manipulate and lost the trust of those closest to him.
I'm sorry to my brother, my grandparents, the rest of my family, and my parents' friends. I'm sorry that I took them away from me.
Tyler's uncle Mike, Blake's brother, addressed the court at his nephew's trial. He said that having to live through all of this again was like having to experience his brother dying all over again.
That's my brother there. We loved him very, very much.
After the hearing, Tyler's uncle, Mike Hadley, said this experience was like a third funeral for him.
We'll never forget. We'll live with this for the rest of our life. He gave us a life sentence.
Tyler was given life in prison with no chance of parole. Had he been 18 instead of just 17 at the time of the crime, he could have been eligible to pay with his life, but minors are not legally allowed to be given that sentence. He reportedly spent his early days in prison gloating about what he did. He would sign autographs for those who followed along with his horrific crimes and earned the title Hammer Boy. In 2018, a judge reviewed Tyler's sentence. He determined that the sentence Tyler had been given was appropriate, so Tyler's sentence of life with no chance of parole will remain in place. Do you think that Tyler's sentence is fair considering what he did, or do you think he deserved a shot at maybe getting parole one day? Let me know what you think in the comments.
a son desperately praying his father is spared.
Lord, please don't let my dad die. Lord, please don't let my dad die.
These are the haunting sounds and images of a family once bonded by faith.
My dad's the pastor at the church, New Life Assembly God.
This is the horrifying story of how a loving and devoted church-going family was torn apart by the evil, selfish actions of a teenage boy. The Petrick family included parents Mark and Susan and their 3 children. There were older sisters Heidi and Holly, and then the youngest, a boy named Daniel, who they called Danny.
Danny was very active, just a fun-loving goofball. He played tailback for Wellington and was a defensive linebacker, and he was top-notch.
Daniel's active, vital life filled with big dreams would suddenly be crushed when a snowboarding accident left him with a back injury and ultimately a dangerous staph infection.
For the most part, Danny had a pretty normal childhood, but once he got that spinal cord injury, things took a turn for the worse.
The doctor said, this is very serious. He can no longer play any sports. He's done. Because if he breaks his back, he will be paralyzed.
Daniel had to spend a whole year at home recovering. No longer able to go to school or play sports like he once did, Daniel had a lot of time on his hands. So he began spending that time playing video games, particularly Halo 3. Daniel became obsessed with this game and wanted to play it all the time, sometimes even as long as 18+ hours a day. Because of how violent the game was, Daniel's dad, Mark, didn't want him playing it. This led to arguments between the two of them, and eventually Mark confiscated the game and locked it in his safe so that Daniel couldn't get to it. This made Daniel absolutely furious. He became violent and started taking his anger out by kicking walls and doors around his house. If anything, this was probably even more of a sign that Mark made the right call about taking the video game away from him. But Daniel didn't see it that way. All he could think about was the fact that he wanted to get his game back. About a week passed by, and on October 20th of 2007, Daniel became determined to get his game back. He was willing to do whatever it took. So when nobody was around, he dug around until he found the key to his dad's safe and went to go unlock it. But when Daniel got the safe open, he didn't just take his video game out. He also saw his dad's gun and took that too. He decided that in a twisted act of revenge, he was going to get revenge on both of his parents. What Daniel did next is almost unspeakable. He crept up behind his parents, who were sitting on the couch in the living room of the home, and he said these haunting words. "Would you close your eyes? I have a surprise for you."
So did you think, I'm gonna go get a gun and I'm gonna kill my dad?
I did. I went in my room and I was mad. I told my dad, hang on, I got something I want to show you. I went and grabbed a gun.
He then fired the weapon at both of his parents, them in the head. Once he believed that they were both dead, he put the weapon in his dad's hand so it would look like Mark killed his wife Susan and then turned the gun on himself. But what Daniel didn't realize was that while his mom had already passed away, his dad was still clinging on to life. Just a short time later, Daniel's older sister Heidi and her husband came over to the house. They had planned to all watch the upcoming game as a family, but nothing could have prepared her for the horrific, gory sight that she was about to walk into.
I don't know what happened. I just came over to my parents' house because we were going to watch the game, and my mom is shot and my dad is shot and my brother's here.
Does anybody know what happened? Did your brother shoot your parents?
I don't know. I think so.
After Heidi called 911, law enforcement arrived quickly and soon realized that Mark was still alive. He was rushed to the hospital, but it wasn't looking good.
What happened after you were shot, Mark?
Well, after I was shot, I was in and out of consciousness. And the only thing I really remember after the paramedics took care of me, I don't remember really anything they did, but just going out the front door. They said I was awake and trying to talk, but I couldn't talk because my jaw was broken a couple places.
Meanwhile, even though nobody was exactly sure what happened yet, Daniel had already become the #1 suspect. Detectives did not believe his story that his parents had gotten into a fight and that his dad had killed his mom. This was the story that Daniel told the cops.
I was sitting in my room, and then my dad was just yelling, just screaming at my mom. my dad walk into his bedroom and then walk back out. And then I heard a gunshot. I ran out there and my mom had been shot. He pointed the gun at me. And then he said he was sorry, and then he shot himself.
But the detectives were not convinced. They were trained to see through fake tears and pretend emotion, and that's what they believed that Daniel was doing, just putting on a show.
You know, we've all been around somebody who they're kind of boo-hooing, but they're not crying, and there's a difference. In a situation where somebody just witnessed their father, their mother, and themselves, it's very emotional, it's very traumatic, but there wasn't the emotion you typically see.
Daniel was eventually arrested and charged with aggravated murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. This was for the murder of his mom, Susan, and the attempted murder of his dad. Meanwhile, Daniel's father, Mark, was in some very bad shape at the hospital. He spent 2 weeks in a medically induced coma, and nobody was sure if he would be able to pull through. But when he did wake up, he had to face another nightmare, the reality of what had happened to his family.
What were you told?
My family came in and they said, Mark, that night Sue died almost instantly, and we've already had the funeral and she's been buried.
Can you imagine coming out of a coma and getting news like that?
When you realized that your son had killed your wife and his mom, how do you wrap your head around that?
In the hospital, when I came out of the coma, all I did was think about that, and I could not get the pictures out of my mind.
Mark had to go through many procedures and surgeries as doctors tried to put his face and jaw back together. He still has the scars that he went through.
And in fact, looking at you now, if you don't mind, I don't know if you all can see the side of Mark's face, but it appears a part of your jaw is missing.
It was. They rebuilt my jaw. They took a bone out of my leg at Cleveland Metro, and they put it in my jaw. I have a skin graft. It's not completely, symmetrical, but they did a great job.
While Mark was trying to focus on recovery, he was not only in great physical pain and torture, but mental anguish as well. Every day as he sat in the hospital, he had to replay everything over in his head. His wife was dead, and his only son was the reason why. He felt himself get more and more angry as time went on.
I was in the hospital for, I think, 30 days. They did 5 surgeries on me. Reconstruction surgeries to my eye socket, the roof of my mouth, my jaw, just all kinds of stuff. I couldn't stop thinking about what happened that night. And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to kill him.
But Mark, who was a pastor of the local church before all of this happened, was still a man of great faith. He eventually realized that hating his son was not going to bring Susan back, and it wasn't going to make anything better. So eventually Mark managed to forgive his son for what he did. After he had recovered well enough to attend, he went to Daniel's trial. The trial went from December 15th to December 17th of 2008. It was widely attended and widely discussed. Daniel's defense discussed how he went from being a kind, easygoing kid to a violent killer only after he began to play Halo 3. It started a deep nationwide discussion about whether or not playing violent video games can actually make you a violent person. Mark spoke up in his son's defense, claiming that Daniel wasn't able to truly comprehend what he did or why he did it. At the end of the trial, Daniel was convicted and facing a possibility of life behind bars. Mark stood up at the sentencing and asked for mercy on his son, and that he would get the least severe punishment under the law. Daniel was ultimately sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole after 23 years. While it might not seem like it, this was the minimum sentence allowed, so if anything, he got lucky. While Daniel is still a part of Mark's life, Mark acknowledges that it is hard not to think about what life could have been like for his son. Daniel ruined his life and ruined the lives of a lot of people around him, and all of this anger supposedly stemmed from a video game.
It is hard to go see him in prison. It's very difficult when he could have had such a life ahead of him.
If there was one thing that you miss most about freedom, what is it?
I miss everything about being free. I miss being able to open my door if I choose to. I miss just the little things, that we don't fully understand that have value until they're removed from you.
Do you think that the sentence Daniel received was fair, or does he deserve to stay in prison for the rest of his life for what he did?
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
The young man in that video is 18-year-old boyfriend Aaron Guerrero and his 16-year-old girlfriend Sierra Halseth. While most people would see that clip and probably assume they are just playing around, there was nothing funny about what they're discussing at all. That's because they really did take this video just 3 days after they brutally took someone's life. And it wasn't just anybody who they decided to kill. It was Sierra's own father, 45-year-old Daniel Halseth. A lot of teenage girls get into arguments with their parents, but what would cause a young girl to hate her dad so much that she would actually carefully plan out and execute his murder? Apparently, the main factor in her decision was that her dad did not approve of her relationship with Daniel and wanted to keep the two apart. Daniel did not believe that Aaron was a good influence on Sierra. The fact that they had both discussed running away together one day to Los Angeles made him even more concerned. But Sierra and Aaron weren't going to let anyone or anything stand in their way of being together. It is because they thought the best thing to do was ambush and kill Daniel. So Aaron and Sierra both went to the store and gathered up the supplies they would need. This included everything from rubber gloves and lighter fluid to a sharp blade. Their careful preparation showed this murder was not something they just did on a whim, but that they carefully planned out and put lots of thought into. On the day of the murder, this killer couple snuck into Daniel's home and attacked him from behind, striking him over and over again. They inflicted more than 70 wounds over his body. It was a truly horrific way to die. Once they were done, Aaron and Sierra attempted to set the home on fire before stealing some of Daniel's belongings, including his car, and skipping town. While it's hard to say what exactly they expected to happen next, Aaron and Sierra seemed to have thought that they were getting away with Daniel's murder and it would be no problem at all. They even took money out of Daniel's bank account by using his own credit card. Meanwhile, family members close to Daniel began to worry after nobody had heard from him in 2 days. They kept trying to call his house, but nobody picked up the phone.
He's been missing for 2 days. His work's called, his family's called, I've called, his ex-wife's called, and there's nobody answering the phone. I know there's something very wrong going on here.
The day after that phone call was made was the day Daniel's brutally battered body was discovered in the garage of his home.
There's a dead body in the garage we just found.
Aaron and Sierra became the top suspects not long after. The cops had pretty much no trouble tracking them down because as soon as they used Daniel's credit card, it sent an alert that showed exactly where they were. Clearly, these two may be evil to the bone, but they definitely aren't the smartest criminals around. After Sierra and Aaron were both arrested, they were charged with murder with a deadly weapon, arson, conspiracy to commit murder, robbery with a deadly weapon, and fraudulent use of a credit card. There was not much point in them trying to defend themselves after the cops had already found the video from Sierra's phone where they were both joking about Daniel. It was clear that they were the ones responsible for this heinous crime.
They found a video clip where the two defendants are laying together and announced that this is their YouTube channel and it's been 3 days since the murder, and they kind of laugh about the fact that Aaron Guerrero committed the murder in exchange for, jokingly having with Sierra.
And then there was this excerpt from the video in which Aaron proves that he has no remorse for his role in Daniel's murder, even though it meant that they had to go on the run.
It was worth it.
On top of all the evidence, the cops also had store security footage that showed both Aaron and Sierra buying the things that they would need to use in the murder.
Two were also caught on security camera buying bleach and other items cops say were used to clean up the crime scene.
Both Aaron and Sierra pleaded guilty to the charges against them. And while Aaron would later express remorse for what he did, Sierra never showed any emotion whatsoever. Many people who watched her in court said that it felt as if she wasn't even connected with what was happening around her.
What jumps out at you from the video is the complete lack of empathy. There seems to be a disconnect in which the perpetrator or perpetrators don't even seem to consider what they're doing to be real in a certain way. And that's why they don't emote in a way that we would consider to be quote unquote normal.
During the trial, Sierra would try to defend her actions by claiming that her dad was and that he had tried to force her to drink alcohol against her will. But those in the Halseth family said that these allegations simply weren't true.
He locks me in place and starts pushing me and me around.
Aaron Guerrero offering an apology.
I ask for forgiveness and as I get sentenced today, and I hope it brings you a little peace.
Some people believe that Sierra was even more of a monster in this case than Aaron. This was because she was able to convince him that Daniel was her, which made him believe he was protecting her, not just killing an innocent person. At the end of it all, Sierra never did seem sorry or even show any regret for what she did. This was Sierra's grandmother, Daniel's mother, and what she had to say about her granddaughter's actions.
Where did the evil come that was bred into a soul that murders their own father?
Christine Halseth delivering an emotional statement about the murder of her son Daniel.
Christina made it clear that she no longer considers this teenage criminal to be her granddaughter.
You're in a tough spot because your son is the victim and the killer is your granddaughter. Can you talk about that?
Well, she's not my granddaughter.
After Sierra was convicted, it was time for her to face her sentence.
You're going to be ordered to pay $2,125 in extradition fees. You're also going to be ordered to pay $5,000 in restitution to victims of crime, and that'll be done jointly and severally with the co-defendant. On count one, you're going to be sentenced to 48 to 120 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections.
There were so many charges that Sierra was convicted of that the sentencing seemed to just go on and on and on.
On count four, you're going to be sentenced to 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections. That's ordered to run concurrent to count three. On count five, you're going to be sentenced to 19 to 48 months in the Nevada Department of Corrections. That's ordered to run concurrent to count four.
Sierra was given a grand total of 148 years in prison, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she'll never see freedom again. Because she was underage at the time of the crime, she could possibly be granted parole after at least 20 years in jail. But for that to happen, she will have to convince the jury that she is no longer a danger to society. Aaron received the same sentence as Sierra. Meanwhile, those who knew and loved Daniel say that the sentence wasn't actually severe enough and that neither teen deserves even the chance to possibly get out of prison one day.
They both should have gotten death with the life they took. 20 years will never be enough for taking Daniel.
Daniel Halseth's loved ones pointing out how Aaron Guerrero appeared to show remorse and emotion, while they believe Sierra did not.
Which one of these killer kids do you think is the most evil? Do you think any of them deserve a second chance? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.